Call to order this meeting of the Board of Supervisors and Liquor and Entertainment Board. It is Thursday, February 2nd, 2017. It is 8:30 a.m. and we're in the Sierra Room of the Community Center. I'm sitting in as Mayor Pro Tem today because our mayor is on his way to Cuba. Would you go ahead and call roll, please?
Good morning. Supervisor Bonkowski. Supervisor Bagwell. Supervisor Barrett. Here. Mayor Kroll. Here. Okay. No Mayor Kroll. Mayor Pro Temp about. We have a quorum.
May I call on Reverend Ken Haskins to lead us in prayer?
Heavenly Father, many of us were awakened this morning at the sound of the rain, and we're reminded that, like the rain, every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven, from you, Father, the Father of lights. And we thank you for every blessing that we receive. We ask that you be with these supervisors and our Mayor Pro Tem today, that you would grant them the light of knowledge and wisdom. And we know with the decisions that they make, they affect so many people and so many lives in our community. So we ask that you grant them good and wise decisions today. In Jesus' name, amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On to item number 5, public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment at this time? Come on ahead. Good morning.
I'm Phil Ware. This is John Lubitsch. We reside on Mark Way in Carson City, Nevada, and I'd like to thank each of you for your service to our community. Before I begin my comment, I was scheduled to be on the agenda until a special use permit for the RV park was withdrawn, and I just want to go on record as still being opposed to the RV park, and I've got a presentation here that I had prepared when I was on the agenda, and I would like to distribute it to Mrs. Merriweather and to y'all respectively. May I get up and do that now? Okay. The only other thing I'll say is we do have a group that's still in opposition, and frankly, we think particularly relative to airport safety related issues, which are included in the handout, that we think the development is irresponsible and would like to have some feedback from you, Mrs. Abowd, and from Mr. Bonkowski, since our residence and the airport is located in y'all's wards. So with that, that's all I have to say. I think John would like to say a few things.
Thank you for your comments.
Sure.
Good morning, and thank you for everything that you people do for the city and the citizens. My name's John Lubitsch. I live at 1001 Markway. I'm here today, like Phil said. We have a large amount of people. Today I'm here representing myself, my wife Tammy Lubitsch, my neighbor Tamara Nance, my neighbor Chris Schreiner, my neighbor Artie Kelly, and my neighbor Carol and Garrett. We're all opposed to the not the mobile, but the RV park at the west end of the airport, east end of Arrowhead Drive. I would like to read to you a story in the Nevada appeal that came out on Tuesday, and it concerns the mayor. And the mayor said, according to the appeal, City is strong, community is stronger. Carson City is thriving thanks to its citizens, said Mayor Bob Kroll at his annual State of the City Monday. Carson City is not merely a collection of neighborhoods. We are one community, indeed, one community working together. If I could leave you with one message tonight, it would be just that. The state of our city is strong. The state of our community is even stronger. And then it goes on to talk about it. The citizens. We kind of look at things different than what you people do and what the Planning Commission does. I was in law enforcement here in Carson City for 15 years. And then I broke my back as a result of a on-the-job injury, and I had to leave, and I became an OSHA person, and I had to go to school for that. And that was one of the things that they taught us, was look outside the box, step back, and look at what's going on. Because you walk into some place and you get sight of what's right ahead of you, not the entire box. So with that, I'm going to go back to this. The citizens of Carson City is what makes this up. And I'd like to bring forth the following. I would like Phil's response, what he gave to you, put into the minutes, and I would dearly ask that you read them along with the Planning Commission meeting of November 30, 2016. During that meeting, there was a lot of talk concerning a lot of different things, not just the 30-day, 180-day. There was a talk about the water issue, which was another SUP that came right behind it. And they spoke a lot about the water issue. And the people that were there from the community, we thought that they had combined the SUP for the water and the SUP for the mobile home or the RV facility. So when we were turned down, told that if we wanted to go on, we had to appeal it, we thought we were done. And then come to find out that right afterwards, there was a brief break, and then they came back and they had the meeting with the SUP for the water, which we were not aware of. And it went through. We made a mistake when we put our appeal in. We forgot to appeal 160. We aren't lawyers, and people that do this all the time are just a bunch of people that live out there, and we made a mistake, if it comes down to it. So, going on, we have a brand new sign at the north end of town, just past McDonald's and Winnie Lane. It says Reno North, Carson City Airport to the right, Old Hot Springs Road. Beautiful sign. Eliminates the fact that we have an airport there. Wasn't there before. I've lived here since 1969. I was in service to the community pretty much my entire life. And I think the airport is a vital part of Carson City, and it's growing. And I think that an RV park at the west end of it is a hazard. It's a hazard to the airport. It's a hazard to the people that may be in that RV park, and it's a hazard to the people that live around there. Just look over the last 6 months. Reno, airplane crashed into the parking lot of the Reno airport. Airplane crashed into the RV park at the north end of the airport. Airplane crashed in Elko, Nevada, just to the east of the airport in a parking lot. Airplanes, little airplanes, they crash all the time. I don't know why, but they do. We've had numerous crashes in the vicinity of where Dana Borda moved his business to. They've gotten caught up in the wires because they had problems. Keith McDonald crashed 20 years ago. He was a very, very, I'm going to say big, but he was he was involved in the city very much. And he came out of it. He was very, very lucky. He came out of it with a limp. We've had airplane crash on College Parkway, just to the south of the NDOT facility in the backyard. We've had 5 or 6 crashes in the Apollo Lane area. It happens. You put an RV park at the west end of the airport and you give them 30 days. They're going to come in, they're going to stay. I went around and in Phil's thing, they gave, there's pictures of 100-gallon propane tanks. There's going to be a big boom. A lot of property loss, a lot of people lost. FAA, they have grant assurances from the city and the airport authority that involves that piece of property. Nothing being happened. They were, in Walt Sullivan's time frame, the city was attempting to buy that property. And when Walt left, it seemed like everybody left. The people at the airport left. Steve, can't remember his name, I know him well, from the Parks Department left. He had a really neat thing planned for that property, if and when the city bought it, and turned over to the Parks Department, because the Parks Department had been given 40 acres from the Bureau of Land Management in that area on and off Arrowhead Drive right there. One thing that hasn't been brought up, access to the school. If they put this in and put this wall in, there are 5 kids that go and live over at Hot Springs Road in those apartments to the back of the old Hot Springs. They currently are told by the school district to walk through that field to the corner of Mark and Emerson to get on the bus. If that is built and they have the big wall, that's going to affect the school district. They're going to have to change everything they do. They're going to have to come up with a new route, a new bus. Who knows? I don't. The old Hot Springs Road is horrible. Has anybody driven down it recently? It goes down to the end of a dead end, turns around. From Ames Construction and all of the work on the highway, they just tore that road apart. I don't think the RV people are going to be wanting to be doing that. Who's going to pay for the new road going to it? Just a few more things. I know you're giving me time. Mr. Takis in the Airport Authority, I spoke to him last night. I brought up to him that I currently am attached to this thing. I've had a lot of medical problems since the November thing. I've been in and out of the hospital, and I have tried to help Phil as much as I could, but I've been kind of whacked out and strange. I've had 5 operations. So, but I spoke to Mr. Takis last night, and he says, well, there's nothing we can do as the Airport Authority. I said, Steve, you are a citizen of Carson City. You can go down there and express your thoughts concerning this. He said, I never thought of that. And the same with Linda Law. I spoke to her last night, and she said the same thing. She said she would ask Tim Rowe to come down today. I don't know if Tim's in the audience or not, but she has the same concerns that we do as a citizen and as the person in charge of the Airport Authority. A lot of safety concerns, a lot of concerns about noise, a lot of concerns about how this is going to affect future FAA grants because of the fact that we are going against the current FAA grants that have been given, because like I have said before, there is wording in those grants, and this is from Yvonne Weaver, that pertains to that field, and that field being open, left open. I spoke to Lorraine, I forgot to write her last name down. She's the second in charge of the FAA out of Phoenix, Arizona. When I told her that this was going on a month ago, her first words was, "Why did nobody tell me that this happened?" The FAA would have put this on its thing and bought that piece of property. We tried in the 90s, the late 90s. They only thought it was worth so much money. Mr. Langston's estimator came out and said that it was worth $1 million. That wasn't what they estimated it at. But she was very concerned, and also very concerned with the future of the airport if this happens. Open Space Committee. We got a big 40-acre area there. I know it's kind of putting the horse behind the trailer, but why don't we have the Open Space Committee open a conversation up with Mr. Shaheen to buy that piece of property, to turn it into a beautiful 40-acre part of the city, along with where the airport authority is, along with where the Arrowhead Drive property is. Steve had a plan that made not a park, but a park type thing like what is on East 5th Street, where there's a 2K, a 5K, a 7K with points in between. And, you know, I've been out there. I'm not into fitness and stuff, but he had a beautiful thing. It would have been a great thing for the city, and it still could be if we get a little, but we try and get the horse back in front of the cart. I have a set of plans here from Mr. Langston, and it was received by Carson City, February 28, 1996. Hot Springs RV and Resort. Mr. Langston submitted these plans for an RV, and they were denied by the Planning Commission and the Airport Authority. They were denied because of the safety issues and a lot of other things in the airport. This is on file. Kind of sets a precedent. How is it that in 1996, I think I said it was, we're denying an RV park because of safety, airport safety, neighborhood safety, but yet we're allowing it to happen now? I think we're kind of backwards here. Phil's response again, I'd like to see it gone over by you. Look at it real hard. Very, very informative response. And with that, I thank you. I see a lot of smiles. Just one other thing, please. I forgot. It's not on my thing here. The Planning Commission in their, and I would like you to listen to that. The Planning Commission in their meeting of November 30th went off on many things. And one of the things was the fact that what was happening, they felt that this was kind of a strange way to go about something. And the district attorney kept telling them, you're getting off what this is about. This is about 30 days versus 180 days. But they kept getting off on stuff. And one thing that a majority of them felt was that the city and the airport, this was a bad thing and an unsafe thing for the city and the airport and the future of the airport. They felt that this was not a compatible use. They would rather see a expansion of the airport and keeping the airport viable rather than seeing an RV park. And I went around to the RV parks in our town, and I talked to them about how full they are. They're not full. They have open room, open spaces, and you can stay there as long as you want. If we have open spaces at the 2 RV parks, why do we need another one? I mean, that's just, it's going to take money away from the 2 existing ones, possibly. I don't know that for a fact. But logically in thinking, people are going to look, there's going to be 3, and whoever's got the cheapest thing and the nicest thing, people are headed to that.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you for your time, and I'm sorry for taking more than I should have. But please, look into it. As a citizen, as the mayor said, we are the backbone of Carson City. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Stay out of the rain.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what happened this morning, but I hope everybody's okay.
Is there any other public comment? Okay.
Excuse me. My cord. Rob, how are you? Thank you. This is Rob Team.
I'm on still. I'm Rob Team. I live at 4097 Louise Drive. I'm here for about the same thing. Lived here my whole life. I have a few things I want to touch on real quick about this, okay? I don't know if we're going to be able to shut Shaheen down or not, but if we don't, I sure, as being a resident there, think that there should be a sound wall, not this little fence that he has proposed. I went out there with my personal grade thing. They're 14 feet above my property level, which John's property, Eric's, everybody back here's property is about the same thing. At where they're starting, they're trying to bring in Class A motorhomes, $1 million motorhomes that are going to look at a sound wall next to a freeway. You walk past the front end of a motorhome, those windows start on most of them around 56 inches. You pull that into the fence like this, you're going to be way above it. They're going to be looking right into our backyards. I didn't buy my house to be stared at by millionaires down the street from my place, you know? That's one thing. That's the main thing. If this happens, there needs to be something done about that, part of their plan. Okay, I've lived there for quite some time. We have quail roost over there in this piece of property. If we go over and we develop it, which way do you think the quail's gonna move? Towards the airport. These quail fly into these little airplanes' motors, they're gonna crash into that RV park and into my residential area. Now, I ain't saying quail always jump up and fly, but what if they do? I also want to bring up the point that back when this town was smaller, there was one RV park that was right next to our dealership. They lost the KOA. They went down, the same family went down to the other end of this town. They developed another RV park. They didn't keep it up. The KOA went away. They've all moved on. I don't mention no names, but very predominant families, same kind of predominant as Shaheen. Now these places have become low income, year-round stays. And nobody up here, and nobody in this room, I'm sure, wants an RV park with year-round living, because you know it creates, you know, you can use your own imagination. I don't really want that there. I bought this home hoping that my family can be there after I'm gone, You know, that's just common sense. And that's about what I got to say. I mean, this project is kind of crazy. It just doesn't make sense. You're going to be looking at a sound wall. $1 million motorhomes aren't going to pull in here, look at a freeway, you know, and sit there and have airplanes fly over them. I mean, if you have these $1 million motorhomes they're talking about, would you go camping in front of an airport? I just don't see it. Doesn't make sense. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there any more public comment?
Good morning. I'm Eric Antilla. I live at 810 Mark Way. I too am opposed to the park there, but I understand that everyone has a right to develop their own property as they see fit, and that makes sense. My concern, of course, is someone else's right to develop their property as they see fit. When it interferes with other people's quality of life, then that's why we're here. It looks like, it sounds like the property is going to be developed, regardless of where we're at. But a consideration, talking to neighbors, is that if we at least put a sound wall, not a 6-foot wall, because as Rob pointed out, these motorhomes are going to be well above, the property's already well above the neighborhood. And to put a 6-foot fence is really not going to mitigate the problem. And so our proposal would be to put a sound wall up. If you put a 10, 12-foot wall up, then what they do behind the park is what they're going to do behind the park. I mean, that's their business. I get that. The other thing that I would like to just perhaps reiterate, the 30-day as opposed to 180 days. The city's losing a lot of revenue by allowing it to go to 180. If you put it at 30 days, then there's a room tax, and the city benefits from that.
The 180 has been dropped.
It has been dropped. I didn't get that notice, so I don't want to rehash that. All right. I just thank you for your attention to this, and I thank you for your service, and it's appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
can I bring up one thing to help you clarify?
certainly.
Again, my name is John Lubich. In the packet that Phil gave to you are pictures. I took my RV. I have a truck with a fifth wheel, and I took my truck, and I parked it 20 feet from the edge of the, where the dirt goes up. Dirt goes up 8 to 10 feet. And that dirt is approximately 60 feet, according to my tape measure, from the end of the pavement. In order for them to put a sound wall up, the sound wall is going to have to be 20 to 25 feet high. There are pictures in Phil's thing. We did it on Holly, we did it on Mark to show you. And each time I made sure that my RV, according to my tape measure, was 20 feet from the edge of the dirt. And the dirt on Holly is even a little farther away than 60 feet. And then there's the access down Research Way. We took a picture of my RV coming up the street with another car, with 2 cars parked on the street. Very, very close. Add in the state employees that walk up and down there all the time, we have a problem. But I just wanted to bring forth that there are pictures showing the RV sitting there at the edge and what it is that we're going to be looking at and how high a wall is. This could be President Trump's wall by the time they get done.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
So thank you very much. And have a good day again.
Now, is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Moving on to item number 6, approval of the minutes, January 5th.
I move to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2017, with corrections to pages 11 and 12 on the voting record.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item number 7, adoption of the agenda. City Manager, any changes to the agenda?
So, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I have a couple of recommended changes. I'm going to do them in order for your consideration. Starting with item 17A, as we are not going to do live interviews of any applicant, I would recommend that we add that to the consent agenda. So again, item 17A, I recommend we add to consent.
Isn't that 19A?
I'm sorry. I should have my, you're right. My apologies. I should keep my glasses on when I speak. Yeah. And items 21B and 21C, I recommend we invert the order that we take those to. So we'll do item 21C, which is our asset management program, first. Then we'll do item 21B, which is the Northridge property item. So again, 21C and then 21B. Finally, as some of the members here who spoke at public comment, item 22 Alpha, the RV Park SUP, that item has been pulled as the applicant has withdrawn his approval for the special use permit.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Board members, any other changes to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as discussed.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. All right, moving on to number 8. We're going to recess as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Liquor and Entertainment Board. Let the record reflect we have a quorum, but that Sheriff Furlong had to leave on other business, so he won't be here for this portion of things. Moving on to item number 10. Oh, and the mayor is absent as well. And then item number 10, public comment. Anything pertaining to liquor and entertainment with regards to public comment? Seeing none. Item 11, minutes, approval of the minutes of December 1st.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Liquor and Entertainment Board for December 1st, 2016 as presented.
I'll be abstaining.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And one abstention. John. All right, item number 12, community development. Lena, are you going to take us through this?
Yes, ma'am. This item is for
Can we hold up a second, please? Adriana, we just had a 3-0-2-1 vote. Is that okay?
Zero meaning absent.
We don't have a majority vote.
He's an abstention, though, so it reduces the...
So are we okay then?
Because he wasn't here.
Right. Yes.
That's,
3 is still.
yeah, that's fine, yeah.
So-
Yeah, 3's the quorum, so you had 2.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
I just wanted to check.
You're fine.
Okay, Lena, go ahead.
This item is for possible action to approve Randall J. Rouse as the liquor manager for Maverick Incorporated, number 560, liquor license number 17-31654, located at 3922 Highway 50 East. They are applying for a packaged liquor license. This is a brand-new location. The applicant has met the requirements, and staff is recommending approval. And the condition is subject to the condition that they attend server training course.
Thank you. And I see the applicant is in the audience. Would you like to come up to the table here?
Good morning.
and welcome. Can you explain to the board and to the public what you're doing at your new location, and then also when your scheduled opening is, and how you intend, not pretend, intend to protect against the sale to minor?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. The intent of our business is the normal convenience store business, 24/7. We sell beer out of the beer doors, and we also have a beer cave that you can walk in and buy beer out of and go to the register. Currently, we have a program, a TAM alcohol training program, that is computer-based training for every employee. So as soon as they're hired, Jeanette, the district manager, is with me she lives in Reno. So when we hire that crew, they'll all go through that training, and they have to pass. If they don't pass, then they don't become employed. So we have a very extensive program for training our folks on understanding how important it is not to sell to minors. It is very important.
Thank you. And when is your scheduled opening?
The pretend one or the real one?
The real one.
Well, the pretend one was February. Now it's going to be March 8th, that Wednesday of that week of March. I believe it's the 8th.
Somehow I must have known that.
Yeah. Yes, we're excited.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Board, any other questions? Any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Okay. I move to approve Randall J. Roche as the liquor manager for Maverick, Inc., number 560, liquor license number 17-31654, located at 3922 Highway 50 East, subject to the following condition: that the liquor manager must complete a server training course acceptable to the sheriff's office within 120 days, pursuant to Carson City Municipal Code 4.13.060.
Second.
Yes. We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yes. Previously, I think in our motions, we haven't specified that it's the liquor manager that has to complete the server training course, but anybody that's going to be selling alcohol. Has that changed, or should that be the actual condition?
The liquor manager needs to attend, but it also should, the way the ordinance currently reads is that anybody serving alcohol has to attend the 120 days, yes.
So I'd ask the motion maker to amend the motion.
So changed to include any employee serving liquor.
Yes, ma'am.
And do we have a second on the
I'll
amendment?
second the motion and the amendment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. Congratulations. Moving on to item number 12B, to present the annual activity report for administrative citations. Lena, you're on.
This item is for discussion only, to present the annual activity report for administrative citations issued. In the packet, you will find that there was compliance checks that were conducted in October and November, and there was 3 businesses that received first offense citations, and we had no second citations or third this year.
Any board questions? Lori?
I do. Just in general, so what we're showing is when we do compliance checks, businesses are cited. If the rest of the months we didn't do compliance checks. So, okay, I just want to be clear that the public understands it's not that in 12 months we only had 3, we only did compliance checks in October and November, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Educate
Okay.
the new guy.
Yeah.
What is the penalty for the citation? What actually happens? I know there are a range, I imagine.
When the sheriff's department goes out and does their compliance checks, the person that sells to the minor is cited from the sheriff's department. That information is then provided to me, and I send an administrative citation to the business. And those citations for a first offense is $100 for the first offense, $500 for the second offense, and $1,000 for the third offense, plus they need to go before the hearings officer. They're two different things. The person that served ends up having to go through the court system, and the business goes through the business license division.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, did you have a question?
Yes, did any one of these three businesses have other first offenses in the last couple of years?
RK Food Mart did not. Golden Gate did not. If memory serves me correctly, I think Bully's has in the past, but I would have to look back to be accurate.
Any other board questions?
Yeah, one more. I'm not advocating anything. I'm, again, just curious, or more than curious, but why is it not 3 strikes and you're out? These are businesses. They know the law. They know how to educate these people. They go through the training. That third strike in a period of how long would it be?
So later on, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. Actually, on your agenda this morning is your review of the liquor ordinance. So if you have comments under that, one thing in particular is just to that point on these citations. Presently, they have they only get to go to the hearings officer, which I serve as. They only go to the hearings officer to that level. It's a third offense within a 6-month period. Presently, we're proposing to make that 12 months so that they can't just keep getting 2 every 6 months, and that's okay. So I think that starts to get to your point, but that's where you should have that discussion.
Right, and that's why I was asking a question going into it. Thank you.
Any other board discussion? Any public comment on this issue? Okay, thank you, Lena. This was just discussion only. Okay. Moving on to item number 13, final public comment on Liquor and Entertainment Board. Seeing none, we will adjourn as the Liquor and Entertainment Board and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. And I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I can do it. I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of items number 16 and 19A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Moving on to item number 18, for possible action to accept the Carson City Cost Allocation Plan for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016 for use in preparing the fiscal year 2018 Carson City budget. Nancy.
Good morning, Nancy Paulson, CFO for Carson City, and I also have Sherry Russell with me, the cost allocation guru. And Marshall with Mahoney and Associates is also here in the audience. So this is to approve the cost allocation plan for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016 that will be used in preparing the fiscal 18 budget. The cost allocation plan was prepared by Mahoney and Associates using a consistent approach in treatment of direct and indirect costs. Since the plan is based on fiscal 16 actual expenditures, we take the allocation done by Mahoney and Associates and make a few adjustments to account for projected payroll increases and for Public Works to reflect the projects that they have planned to work on in fiscal 18. In addition, this year we've added an adjustment that reconciles the difference between what was charged through the cost allocation plan in fiscal 16 and what the allocation should have been based on fiscal 16 actual expenditures and the projects that were worked on. So each year, as actual figures become available, we'll be making this adjustment. So the allocated costs will be internal service charge expenditures to the various special revenue funds and enterprise funds and revenue to the general fund. For fiscal 18, the total charge per the plan is $4,770,000.
Thank you, Nancy. Any board questions? Lori, go ahead.
So I just want to comment and thank you all very much for taking the process from last year and doing the debits and credits to the actuals. I think that that's just wonderful, and I just wanted to thank you for a job well done.
Thank you.
What she said.
Any other board comments? Any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board.
Make a motion. I move to accept the Carson City Cost Allocation Plan for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2016 for use in preparing the fiscal year 2018 Carson City budget.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item number 20A, purchasing and contracts. Laura, are you going to take us through this?
Yes, I am. Laura Rader, Purchasing and Contracts. This is to award the contract 1617-096, the West Williams Street Sewer Replacement Project to Sierra Nevada Construction for a bid amount of $236,007 with a contingency amount of $23,600 for a total not to exceed $259,607. A total of 6 competitive bids were received, with Sierra Nevada Construction being the lowest.
Thank you, Laura. Question I had is on this particular item, what was Public Works, their engineering department estimate for this project? Danny?
Danny Rotter, Public Works. I believe it was around 275, 260, 275, something like that.
Thank you.
And just real quick, one thing I'll just mention, this was actually planned to go last year, but because of the proximity to William Street and with the downtown and traffic, we didn't want to exacerbate the issue, so that's why it's coming forward now.
Great, thank you. Board, questions? Seeing none, public comment? No, Brad?
Yes, one question. Previously, in the past, when we get these contracts, we've had the bid breakdown for all of the contractors, all the bids. In this, yeah, so that we could compare them. And in this one, we only have the one for Sierra Nevada. In the future, if we could we go back to having all of them side by side so we can look at them? Thank you.
Any other board comment? Public comment? All right, then I'll bring this back to the board. For motion.
Make the motion. I move to determine that Sierra Nevada Construction, Inc. is the lowest responsive bidder pursuant to NRS Chapter 338 and to award contract number 1617-096 West William Street Sewer Replacement Project to Sierra Nevada Construction, Inc. for a bid amount of $236,007 plus a contingency amount of $23,600 for a total not to exceed amount of $259,607 to be funded from the sewer line replacement rehab account as provided in fiscal year 1617.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to Public Works, item 21A. Who's going to take us through this presentation? Oh, that's right, we're going A first, then C.
A, C, B.
B, right. Go ahead. A first,
Good morning, David Bricketta for the record. So this is going to just give you an update of the activities that have been going on at the sewer treatment plant and the water resource recovery facility. So this is just a high-level overview, and what you can see here is we're currently in progress with a $30 million contract with KG Walters Q&D Construction to do some major rehabilitation at the treatment plant. And in general, today we're going to be discussing that we're ahead of schedule, and there's 3 major projects associated with this. That's the bioreactor, which is the heart of the system, the secondary system, the settling tanks associated with the secondary system, and the digesters. So this is the what we call the bioreactor, and this is a time-lapse video I just want to show you real quick. Just to give you a perspective, this is a large concrete project, and the amount of concrete placed so far on this project is equal to the size of a football field covered in concrete about 9 feet tall. So it's a huge, huge concrete project. You know, the other good analogy for this was just the amount of rebar, the amount of constructional rebar put in this is equivalent to about 10 large 727s. That's the weight associated with this project. So this is a very large concrete project. The heart of the system, again, is a bioreactor. Here's some photos of the bioreactor standing down within itself as the construction project was going along. These are these giant, large mixing blades that are going to be put into this to help mix things up. This is an overview taken by the drone. The project is about 3/4% complete, and you're looking down on top of the bioreactor where the decks report actually up top now. This is a video of the other component. We call it a clarifier, but this is a time-lapse video showing just the progress that were made on this settling tank. Just shows the amount of excavation material that really is being done with this project, and then the construction of the tank itself. When this project's complete, the 2 tanks that show kind of on the right-hand side there that have the sewage in them, this one's going to be similar to that. But right there, what you do see is all that rebar that's put in to support that structure. The walls are going in there. This is just a photo of that area, you know, the large vehicles down there, the excavation of the material. This is the building of the walls. They've got the base in. Now they're starting to form the walls of the structure. And then this is actually where it looks like now with it being backfilled. The other big component of this project is the digesters. This is a component where we take all the solids and we break them down further. You see a lot of structure on the outside of this, and it's going to help to mix and increase safety at the treatment plant. The byproduct of a digester is dangerous gas, and this is going to help with that system. The gas basically was eating the system from the inside out. So this is a planned replacement as that process. This photo here shows what you don't see very often is actually the inside of a digester and the new piping and plumbing work that's being put in to help move things around appropriately. This is significant because this is what we call sludge heater. Is part of this process, we have 2 sludge heaters, and the sludge heater actually started to fail, so we were down to 1 going into winter, which created problems. But we worked with the contractor, we worked with the vendors, moved this project up, and we're able to get it completed ahead of schedule, so there were no problems going through the winter. This, we call this phase, the Phase 1A upgrades. The planned side of things, in March of 2016, we awarded the contract and notice to proceed. This summer, we were supposed to have the digesters completed. In the spring of 18, the bioreactor completion and clarifier. And then lastly, the substantial completion would be in 2018, September. Revised, now where we stand is we're about 85% complete as of current. So we're ahead of schedule on budget, and we expect this to be completed by December this year, a year early, which is significant progress. So that's going to set us up for which is the next phase, which we'll call the capital improvement fiscal year 18. And this is all part of the next phase that was already planned as part of the rate structure. It's about a $9.7 million project. Will be associated with a bond, but that was already part of the plan process in the rates. And here's just a description of some of the items to give you some more detail what's going to be part of this next project. So the milestones out of this next project proposed is instead of waiting, the next year, we'll bring this forward actually in February of this year, do a request for proposal for design services. And CMAR Construction Manager at Risk construction support. That was a very effective tool on this project. In April of 17, we'd plan to shortlist the interviews and do contract negotiations. May of this year, contract award. December 17, I guess that's the same. in March of 18, begin construction with this plan completion in March of 2019. So that's just a high-level overview, kind of where we are with our current project, where we want to go for the next 2 years, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So, David, do you think that the CMAR process actually helped complete the project sooner? Do you think that that really does help, having the
It does.
project manager and really moving it?
Absolutely. We find this to be very beneficial, especially at the wastewater plant where there's just a lot of unknowns. And so when we brought the construction manager at risk as part of the design aspect of it, they were able to help do some solution problem solving, and that definitely helped us where we are, so yes.
David, thank you for reminding me that my aunt's investment in Northwest Portland Cement helped me a little bit with my college. It's a big cement project from what you say. You mentioned also that you worked with your contractors to get the backup, shall I call it a backup digester?
Yeah, and actually what it is, it's the heating system. We had 2 old heating system elements, and we replaced those with 2 new ones.
Are you doing the same as much as you can possibly can to have a fail-safe project complete throughout, where there are things? Because, as we all know, over the last 30 years, these things do break down.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's a great tie-in to what Public Works is going to be presenting moving forward as the asset management plan.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any public comment? Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Now we will take item 21C. This is a presentation to inform the board on the progress of the city's asset management program.
While Stephanie gets that loaded, I'll just mention as part of kind of asset management with our performance contract, we're working on some building controls, so it may not be so cold in here, so.
Long time coming, Danny.
Just in time, the way I look at it.
Good morning. Technical difficulties aside, Danny and I are both very pleased to be here this morning to give you a progress report on where we are with the city's asset management program. As you may be aware, this is something that is being discussed on a national level as well as state and local, and I believe that the city really is on the forefront of this in where we are taking the program. What we'd like to do is just kind of walk you through some background on what we see as asset management overall, what the city's goals are, and where we've headed, what we've completed so far, and what our next steps are. And we have a couple of demos along the way. We were testing this out this morning, and the internet's a little slow, so we just ask you bear with us as we try to show you some exciting things that we have done so far. So just to start off, in regards to asset management, what we see as the city's program is the process of making the best possible decisions regarding our building, operating, maintaining, renewing, replacing, and even disposing of our buildings and our infrastructure assets. And really the objective behind that is so that we can maximize benefits, we can manage the risk, and provide satisfactory levels of service. And a big component really of that is the sustainability of our assets into the future. What this requires is a thorough understanding of our characteristics and conditions of our infrastructure. We need to know what is out there and what condition it's in, and also setting some strategic priorities so that we can do the best decision-making as we move forward through the program. And then lastly, and probably most critically, is to develop a financial plan and figure out how we turn from here into creating this program. We set out 7 goals for our asset management program listed there before you. And really what we're looking at is, for goal number 1, our asset inventory is, what do we have and where is it located? One of the things that was determined early on is that our GIS would be our core technology that we would use in order to document the assets and their locations. And we have moved forward with that very successfully. Goal number 2, for condition assessment, we have started taking a look at what condition some of those assets are in. And when we're looking at our assets, we're looking not only at our building facilities, but we're also looking at landfill, fleet, parks, water, wastewater, streets. So we're looking at everything and trying to determine what the remaining useful life is for those assets. Capital improvement planning will utilize all the information that we have collected through that asset inventory and condition assessment so that we can make those decisions going into the future. And then, of course, implementing a funding mechanism is something that we need to consider and come up with some options for. Our CIP and annual funding process and procedures is, once we have collected all of this information and we move forward, we want this to become part of that annual process and program. And then, of course, we need to consider maintenance so that we can promote the sustainability and the reliability of the infrastructure into the future. And that's going to require, it's going to include some policies and some operating procedures and decisions moving forward. And then lastly, our goal for reporting, one of those things is to be able to come before you on a regular basis and let you know where the program stands. But we also have, as part of our plan, to create our asset management plan. And that really, it's not the answer to the issue, but it's our roadmap on how we're going to get there and how we're going to turn that tide. We did create a program implementation timeline, and that was included in your packet. As you can see, we really hit the ground running. Even prior to my coming on board and our asset manager coming on board last year, the city has been collecting this information and including it in GIS for quite some time. But one of the things I think that is exciting and encouraging is when we look to other communities, even some of those in our own backyard, some of those initiations of the asset management program is just deciding what kind of software, it's going to take a couple years to staff up, determine what software they're going to utilize and move forward. And we are already, essentially into our first year of the program, and what we decided was the priority for us was, what are those processes and policies? How can we utilize software that we have, or that is a very cost-efficient, quick approach, and move forward so we can hit the ground running, determine what our needs are, and in the future, yeah, we may have to look at some of those larger software programs, but we've really been able to utilize what the city already has, so that we've spent our time actually working on our condition assessments. So I think that's very encouraging. And we're starting that capital improvement planning process this year and utilizing some of the information that we've collected for that, which I'll go into a little more detail on. Our next big steps and challenges will be our funding mechanism and implementation, and really we see that as something that's going to continue on for the next few years. And in 2019, we'll see that as an opportunity to look at the maintenance component while we're doing reporting to you all the way through the process. You may have noticed that that implementation plan was about a 5-year time frame, and really when you're looking at an asset management plan, it really is a much longer process, long range. We're looking at something that is really going to take us out into a 20 or 30-year plan. So we see that 5-year process really being cyclical, and it's something that once we get through it the first 5 years, then we're going to start that process over. It's just a continuing cycle there. With that, I just would like to talk about some of the objectives that we've met for those goals. So early in June, we had a capital project Kaizen event, and what we were doing there was we were trying to establish policies and procedures of how to get the as-built drawings for our capital projects into GIS. So that was a project we put forward. It's ongoing. We've been establishing those procedures, and we still have a few things to do to finish that up. We also did hire Matt Lawton as our Carson City asset manager. We are very fortunate to have his knowledge and expertise, and he's taken us far in a very short time. Part of that, and being one of our objectives, is our transition to bring GIS back to the city. And I think that the process in which that has occurred has been very smooth. And now the next things that he has been working on, and really at quite a rapid pace, is working with our water, our sewer, and also our stormwater to integrate the assets into the GIS database. We also spent some time in the last few months looking at options for our facilities and condition surveys and how we can be better documenting and ranking what's going on in our facilities. And so we spent a little time looking for the right tool. We found a product called Smartsheet, which is kind of a glorified spreadsheet, very easily able to import and export from Excel. And very cost efficient, that can be utilized on mobile devices out in the field. And through that, in about a 3-month period, our facility staff went out and we did assessments, it's a pilot project, assessments on all of our buildings, 92 buildings we did within 3 months. And I'm going to take you into a little bit more detail on this. But the second component of this that we did was also link this to GIS. So again, that's our core technology for asset management. I'm going to have to pop out of this presentation to show you a little bit more how it works. But essentially, in our database, we're able to click on the box and it will pull up the facility condition assessment. So you can take a look at the whole city's GIS, locate one of our facilities, click on the box, and it will bring up our condition assessment. So I'm just going to step out for a minute so I can show you that. So we created some options to show you. One of the things that we discovered this morning is there's some sort of browser block that won't allow us to actually demo it from the GIS. But essentially, what you're seeing here is a view of what it would look like in GIS. You would be able to click on that building, and it would automatically for you bring up our Smartsheet software, and it would be for that particular facility, which in this case was the Aquatic Center. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time showing you, when we went out in the field, what we were really looking at. Before we deployed this, we identified the different systems that we thought it was important to capture. We took a look at things like the parking lot. We looked at electrical systems, mechanical systems, plumbing. What are the foundations looking like? What are the roofing systems looking like? And we created a ranking system that is essentially, it's a fairly standardized system in which ranking of 1 means there may be some aesthetics improvements that are needed, but it's in good shape. And a ranking of 5 means it's pretty critical that we start looking at replacing this. So just to show you on our actual Smartsheet, we were able to identify each of the facilities. we took a picture of that location, and then we had some standard data in regards to, if we just look at site improvements in this instance, what type of improvements are there, quantities, what is the remaining useful life for those? And those were estimates that our facilities staff made on their own. And then we also ranked those. And if there was an action required, in this instance for these, it was normal maintenance, but on some of them, when there was an action required, I think, if this will let me scroll down to it, I can show you, there's no secret in regards to the roofing at the Aquatic Center, and it's on our list for repair and improvement this year. And so we were able to then go ahead and note that within the smart sheet, and it usually responds a whole lot faster. But the other thing that I think was a really beneficial tool in this instance is it allowed us the ability to capture photographs as well. And so here we are being able to document what we see at that given time. And our goal moving forward on it is to go out and do these approximation of these, a portion of these on a quarterly basis annually, so that we'll continue to go out and we'll visit each of the sites and we can update things as they come up and occur. Again, it's a pilot program. There are some particular components like the HVAC that we'd like to have a specialist in the field come out and really take a look at those units. They can be quite expensive when they need to be replaced. So at this point, we've done some estimation of what we think the useful life on them is, but we want to get that confirmed. We have had a complete assessment done on our roofing needs, and those are projected out over the next 20 years, but it is something that also needs to be revisited on a regular basis because conditions change. So those are our goals moving forward. But it was something that was able to be implemented quickly. The staff really made a lot of effort to get out there and get it completed in the time frame that we requested, and I absolutely appreciate their efforts on that. But it gives us a starting point so that now we can move forward and we can use this information as we work through our asset management plan. With that, one of the other areas that we have initiated the asset management plan and the condition assessment is our sanitary sewer master plan. So that is a project that has currently been initiated and is ongoing. And then we also have taken a first step and a very high level look at what our reinvestment funding needs are. So with that, I don't think it's a secret to anybody that there are needs out there, and this is our opportunity to turn the corner towards those. And we know that it's not something. Can you scroll slightly to the left so we get rid of that last call? There are, and I'm going to caveat some of this, but what I do want to say is we know this isn't something that can be changed tomorrow, but we need to be excited about the fact that we're taking the steps to move forward today, and that even though there will be incremental changes over time, there's going to definitely be positive benefits to those changes. So again, this was a very high-level cursory review. That's why we didn't put down exact dollars and cents, but we just wanted to demonstrate that we know we need to project some reinvestment funds going into the future. With that being said, of these different assets, we're looking at facilities, fleet, and parks that are funded through the general fund. And the other assets do have some of their other own funding mechanisms. So taking that into consideration, if we look at the general fund only and we consider a 5% reinvestment goal, really that 5% could be anywhere between 2 and 7%. But this is just for, high-level first view planning. And one of the objectives that we have that will be coming forward is a more detailed reserve study, which is going to help us determine, is it 2, is it 7? But for discussion's sake, we went with a 5% reinvestment goal. We currently fund approximately $1.7 million annually for those programs and those assets. 5% reinvestment goal means we need $8.5 million annually, and that gives us a gap of approximately $6.75 million. At a 3%.
Could I break in and ask a question here?
Absolutely, sure.
Where'd you get that 1.75? Is that currently 1 year, or over the last 4 or 5 years, at some points there was almost nothing? Is that an average, or is that what?
We took a look at last fiscal year, what was being funded for last fiscal year. And, you know, should this reduce down to a 3%, that's going to change that gap to around $4.5 million. So there still is definitely some finessing that we need to do in regards to those numbers. But again, we're taking that first step forward, we're turning the tides, and we're moving in a new direction so that we can sustain our infrastructure into the future.
Stephanie, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
Sorry, you were. So when I'm looking at that in facilities, I'm not sure, but where do you have the computer systems, the data systems? Where is that captured for capital reinvestment? Because, you know, you can look at Tiburon and all of the projects that we're doing, so where are we going to capture data systems?
Are you talking like IT infrastructure? Is that kind of what you're talking about? That's a good point. We were thinking more big stuff. I don't know how much assets we have in IT as far as, you know, as far as facility goes. We have, you know, tens of millions of dollars in those, and the more we're not funding them, the further we're getting behind. So
I'm just recommending that somehow we don't miss data systems, because like, what was it, $1 million for Tiburon? And you know that they de-support computer systems
Sure.
that you have constantly, so I just wanted to make sure we don't miss that in the.
Yeah, as part of our normal capital improvement program, we do roll up all those IT, and we are going to have some big IT requirements coming up. As you know, the assessor, treasurer, finance, pretty much everyone, to include the clerk recorder, uses a system that's very soon going to be not supported. So we're going to have a couple of big IT costs, but typically we do fund it out of what Stephanie had talked about, that $1.75 million. That also does include our IT infrastructure and our IT recapitalization. Well, things like Tiburon, for example.
Or it's not in facility right now?
Well, things for Tiburon.
Okay.
Tiburon, for example, that was paid out of the 911 surcharge fund. But again, if you look at our general fund activities, you've got facilities, fleet, parks, and the landfill.
Because I'm like voting machines. I'm just
Voting machines are coming up as
trying to make sure we're
well.
not missing electronics. Maybe that's the right way for me to say it.
Right. We're going to be coming to you probably as part of CIP, along with the clerk, to talk about voting machines. We're working very closely with the other counties, especially the other rural counties, with the Secretary of State, with NACO, with our lobbyist. We're hoping to get support from the state on that project as well. But yeah, voting machines are going to be coming up here pretty soon when we look at CIP, when we look at capital.
So moving forward, a couple of things to consider is, and there's a slide that we probably should have included, and I will bring it to you next time. When we're talking about that gap, some of that is for reserves going forward. So there may be years that we need all of that, and there may be years that it's rolling forward, because that's the intent, and the intent of the sustainability is to be able to have that in the future for when it's needed. But funding aside, there are a lot of benefits to asset management as a whole, and including better operational decisions. So having the knowledge out there, whether it's regarding the dollar amount or the condition of the facility, is going to help us with better decisions moving forward. And it's also going to make for a more efficient operation. Other things that it will provide is better communication with our customers, as well as, you know, that increased knowledge to allow for better financial decisions in the future. We also feel that The program itself is going to help us to prolong our assets, our asset life, because it's going to help us with sound decision-making, and it's going to help us focus our operations and maintenance. And again, the key component of all of this is system reliability, resilience, and sustainability into the future. And it also will reduce occurrences of those emergency situations when things come up, because we're going to be planning for them and we're going to get ahead of them, and that's the goal. And ultimately, all of that leads to cost savings. So with that, Danny is going to talk to you about where we're headed.
So I just wanted to touch on a few things. I think we're off to a pretty good start. We're going to continue that assess asset inventory and condition assessments. We're going to set up parks with some of those same sheets for them to go around and use the same ranking, 1 to 5, for them to do that. I think streets will come up with another data point in our model. They're going to have the vans drive around with the gyroscopes and lasers and all that stuff, do that soon. Another key item will be that reserve study and how far we go out, 20, 30 years, to get that reserve. So how much should we be putting away each year? And there's going to be needs that go above that, and there's going to be needs that go below that per year, but we'll want to project that out. That goes with that funding source for the long-range planning, how we're going to start to get there little by little, and depending on what the legislature does, we'll see there too. Also, we'll be looking at opportunities to utilize some part-time staff or a consultant, particularly in getting more data collection from the field, where that might be a one-time effort instead of an ongoing effort. We're also looking at our ongoing efforts between myself, Stephanie, and Matt. We're anywhere between 0.75 and 1 FTEs, just kind of managing this program. You'll see some of our neighbors are far and above those numbers, but we kind of pride ourselves on being pretty efficient. There's also the topic of some of the software. Just to give you a ballpark range, we looked at some capital improvement planning software that you can go up to $200,000-$300,000 to buy. We implemented Smartsheet, I think, at $400 a year, something like that. So we're trying to be lean. We're trying to work through that lean management, that Kaizen, that continuous improvement. So it's gonna continue to morph and get part of just our normal habits. So that's kind of what we're looking to do, where we're headed. If there's any other questions that we didn't address, we'd love to answer them for you.
Just a general question, just for the public and just for awareness. I heard in the discussion that, we're not looking yet at the major software that we're getting in and getting the project going. Where are we in the thoughts of the GIS? We were working with the assessor, and that was just for the general public to understand. We're looking to be efficient across all of our data systems, and GIS isn't just for asset management. It does the maps that the public can look on the assessor's website. So can you just talk a little about that?
Yeah, so the GIS program as a whole serves a lot of other needs, including mapping open space, looking at some trails, maybe an app for somebody coming in wanting to look at trails, where do I go? It's a big part of displaying assessors' data to the public. And so we're looking at all those things too, as to how we can improve that and do it across the board, kind of all on the same page. So it just, in asset management as a specific category, it's kind of the core around it, so.
And I have a question with regards to maintenance. Will this actually allow for a documented roadmap so that going forward, projecting out, you know exactly what needs to be done at any particular period in time, such that, when institutional memory is lost, you still know what needs to happen?
That's exactly what we're trying to capture. Obviously, we're already doing maintenance, and we're starting to, look into those things as to how we can better do those maintenance. For instance, our work orders are performed in that same finance and assessor system. That's a 30-year-old database. So to try and ask the question of how often do we go out to the library roof or check air filters or do those things? And to be honest, it's a pain. is not good. But we're working around it. We're looking at a way. There's some tie-ins with Excel that we pulled out and we look at it, and that's kind of that streamline effort. But that's part of looking at that bigger software. If we can continue that database of how often do we need to go look at air filters and roofs and those sorts of things. What have we done historically, and how can we get better in the future? So those are all topics that we're looking forward to in all the maintenance categories.
And I would just add to that I think because of the processes that we're going through right now, it's going to help us make better choices about that software in the future. So instead of selecting a software before we started down this road and then learning how to use the software or make the software fit what we're doing, we're working on those processes and procedures ahead.
So, yeah, Madam Mayor, I just want to put on the record some of the things we spoke about at the board retreat for residents who may have missed part of that. It's important that we look at what we currently use in terms of a funding source for capital. We take a nickel from our property tax rate and we dedicate that. That's a bulk of that $1.75 million that Stephanie referred to. The good news for that is part of what we generate from that fund, which is just under $700,000 a year, goes towards debt service that is going to be retired here in June. So that'll give you some options on how to proceed. You can continue to roll forward that entire $700,000 into our capital improvement program. You could decide that you want to do additional bonding. That would get more money up front, obviously. The drawback would be we would then have 10 or 20 years worth of debt service. But there's a very good argument to be made on both ends, whether you go for additional debt, additional bonding to get money up front to take care of some of our capital overhang that we currently have. So you have options there. We're generating good revenue growth, and you're going to have some options in terms of spending down some of your ending fund balance, should you choose to go that route. There could be combinations or permutations of both of those. You could do a little bit of bonding, spend some of the ending fund balance, and we could generate quite a bit of money this year and next fiscal year and really get at some of the requirements that have been dogging us since the recession hit. So you're going to have some options here. We actually have, I think, a good news story to present to you and to the community. We're never going to have every dollar that we need, whatever the model tells you. Even when I was on active duty at Camp Pendleton, Navy Engineering Command had a very sophisticated model that told me on an annual basis how much money I needed for every asset. Even the Department of Defense never fully funded that. So part of leadership is determining where you're going to accept risk. And that's frankly what we're all trying to come up with. Stephanie talked about, should it be a 5% reserve? Should it be 7? Should it be 2? And just to explain that to people, if you go with a 5% reserve, that means you're going to expect to replace whatever that item is every 20 years. You're going to get 20 years out of a boiler or a roof, for example. Is 20 years the right term? Or are you going to get 50 years out of it? That would be a 2% reserve. So, I mean, there's all different combinations there as well. These are all policy level decisions that we're going to seek your decision and your guidance on as we build not only the asset management program here, but also the budget for this coming fiscal year. I would also point out that we probably do need to have a dedicated funding source that is more realistic as to what a requirement is. I personally believe, just based on a couple of years worth of data, that we're going to generate somewhere in the $1.5 to $2 million range of new capital requirements every year. So we should have a funding source that generates, or when fully phased in, would generate that amount of revenue. So I want to thank Stephanie and Danny for the work they've done. They've really put together, I think, a great program. Jen Budge as she briefed at the board retreat, is going to use the same standards. She's also going to have just one individual do all of the park and rec assessments. That way, when they give it a 1 to a 5 rating, it's consistent. You don't have one person look at it and go, okay, I think that's a 1. Someone else may go, maybe it's a 3. So we're going to have a consistent ranking from parks as well that's going to completely mirror everything that Stephanie showed you here. So I want to thank you all. I think you did a great job. Great presentation as well, Stephanie. Thank you. And subject to your question, Madam Mayor, I think that concludes what we had here.
Thank you very much. Any other board comments?
Yeah, I thank the city manager for his analysis of how you're going to do parks and how you've been doing the rankings 1 to 5. I'm always concerned in decision-making about what I call the garbage in, garbage out problem. And so I hope there's more than one set of eyes, and I know that we're lean on staff as well as on software at this point. But nevertheless, I trust that that's the way it's being done so that we don't just get one person's look at something and say, oh, that roof's gone. It's pretty easy to tell that, but there's a lot of other shades of gray involved. Am I correct in that assumption?
Absolutely. Our assessments were primarily done by one individual for facilities. Jim Foster went out and did the work on the ground, boots on the ground. When he came back, and after we had all 92 buildings in, we asked the rest of our skilled trades staff to go through and do a cursory review, because some of them have different areas of specialty. Some of them have strength in plumbing or HVAC. So we asked them to go back through, have discussions with Jim about anything that might need to be changed, just to make sure that, again, there's a second set of eyes. And then finally, both myself and Ron Reed, who is our facilities manager, went through and we reviewed them as well. And then that continuing assessment is going to occur for a portion of those buildings on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, and I also want to comment that this is really good that we're doing this, and we found that in the previous presentation by Mr. Bucetta about the sewage treatment plant. We've all known for years the sewage treatment plant was on the precipice, and we're coming back from that precipice. And this is really great. I want to commend you and the city manager on the work you're doing, because, and I know that Brad's been involved in this. Everybody here has been involved in this except me, because I'm the newbie. But I used to watch out there, and as far as I'm concerned, this is really what it's all about up here at a policy-making level, is making decisions that look out 30 years, not just 30 days. Thank you.
And, Stephanie, can you go over briefly on the reserve study? So the way a reserve study works is that you put the assets in, you have the condition, but the replacement or the maintenance dates that go into that reserve study are based on the estimated useful life of that asset. Can you just briefly go over the process that we talked about, where when that date's coming up in the schedule of the reserve study, that we will actually go out and look at it and assess it so that we're not replacing assets that still have useful life?
Absolutely. We, as part of this ongoing maintenance and those policies and also standard operating procedures that we need to put in place, those are conditions that we need to include. And so when we embark on this reserve study, and that's one of the reasons why we think it's going to be important in this instance to bring in someone to assist us with that has specialty in that area, we can take all of those things in consideration. We certainly don't want to throw money at something that doesn't need to be replaced yet, allow that to be utilized for those needs. And there are different life cycles, whether you're talking about, an entire building or just the roof, just the HVAC, all of those things will have different lifespans, and there are industry standards out there, but visually looking at them and verifying that is critical.
John?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Brad asked a great question, because there's the question of how long something lasts, and then how long something lasts beyond that through good maintenance, if it's still got useful life. And I know the city manager has talked to me previously about the fact that he doesn't always trust the models, and I applaud him on that, because if you just go by what the usual thing is, you're likely to make the same decision, wrong decision on the other side of it. I'm curious, regarding the way in which you look at that a little more, fill me in a little more on that from the standpoint of how you get the sweet spot between too soon and too late.
I think the best answer to that is really understanding, like the city manager said, how we're managing the risk. And so when we talk about an HVAC having a 20-year life or a 30-year life, or carpet, we're gonna fund those things. We're gonna try and plan for those fundings, but really you're gonna focus on the critical assets. And if you have some wiggle room and certain things that can be pushed, it's carpet and paint, not HVAC and roofs. So I think that's kind of how we're approaching that, if that answers your question.
Just to add on to that, the way this program will work is that there'll be blends throughout the program. So whether that's the economic lifespan of an asset, because a LED light bulb isn't going to last as long as an HVAC unit or a boiler. So there will be blends even with the reserve amount. So some items may need a 2% reserve, some may need a 5% reserve, some may need a 10% reserve, just depending on how often they need to be replaced and how much they cost. So I think when this program is completed and implemented, what you're going to see isn't just a rule of thumb. You know, we have a 5% reserve and everything's got a 20-year replacement, and, you know, just step by step. It's going to be blends of all of these different condition assessments and reserves for each item. So it's going to be complex, but it's also a process that is well known in the industry. So we're not reinventing the wheel; we're just improving the wheel.
Glad you brought that up, and I'm happy to see this going on, because there's almost no more important thing that we can do to look out, because if we're constantly dealing with crisis, we can't get anywhere. I like to call this, instead of the capital improvement budget, the capital catch-up budget.
Yes, that's correct. Is there any public comment on this issue?
Good morning. Allie Bannister for the record, Carson City Juvenile Services. I would just like to speak on behalf of Juvenile Services and let everyone know that we fully support, we're here to support the asset management program, as we think that it's a great idea, especially if it's going to help with the heating in our department. No, I'm just joking. That's not why we're here.
First.
You got your fence. What else do you want?
That's right, I know. Actually, we're here to talk specifically about the fleet, and more of just exactly what you're talking about, the catch-up. The fleet in our department, and I know that this is probably beating a dead horse, because I know you guys have talked a lot about the fleet all around the city, and especially at the sheriff's office. But we're having a difficult time catching up with the repairs and the fleet management at our department as well. So I'm not here to ask for anything. I just want to make the board aware of the potential issues to our current fleet in the city, and specifically at Juvenile Services. We currently have 8 vehicles, so not very many, but 7 which are assigned to sworn officers and utilized on a daily basis. Of these 7 vehicles, they've become old and worn, just as many cars do that are driven all the time. Many of these vehicles spend numerous hours in the shop, which is becoming problematic for our department and officers. 3 are currently in the shop right now, which is problematic for our officers because they can't do their essential job duties. Our officers cannot properly do their job because they're not making contact with their clients, and that budget line item is currently becoming spent. To paint you a picture of what our department looks like as far as fleet and officers using cars, we have 9 officers, 7 who are assigned cars to conduct their daily jobs, and 1 assigned to our detention staff.
These officers transport youth on a daily basis, conduct home visits and school visits, and even transport youth to many appointments on a daily basis. These cars also serve as safety vehicles when youth are detained or transported to a secure facility or even a mental health hospital. They transport youth to facilities across the state, to Silver Springs, to Douglas County, and transports are being done often as on a weekly basis and even 2 or 3 times a week. Having a safe and efficient vehicle is a priority, and especially when transporting youth. More importantly, having a vehicle, period, to conduct a job is most important in our community in order to provide community safety. I'd like to provide the board a little snapshot of what our vehicle history recently looks like. In the last month and a half, we've had 1 car in and out of the shop 3 times for various issues. At one point, I had one of my officers tell me that they felt that their safety was at risk transporting a juvenile down the freeway. This car's been in and out of the shop, is old, and has finally been determined that due to the age of the vehicle, they don't feel that the parts can be replaced anymore. Another vehicle's transfer case has failed, which will cost $2,600 to replace. However, our budget line item in order to fix the vehicles is only $1,300, and we've already spent $800 of that line item. So we have no other choice but to fix the transfer case, which is fine, but unfortunately, we just continue to spend this line item. Unfortunately, officers' cars are old, and they will likely to continue to break down and continue to require maintenance, and we understand this. But I just wanted to make the board aware that in the last 2 years, we have continued to overspend this line item by thousands of dollars in order to maintain our fleet. Each year, the amount we have spent on maintenance continues to increase and become problematic. During the last 3 years, the Department of Juvenile Services has been a good partner with the city and has been financially responsible with our budget. We have given back at least 10% of our budget, totaling over $513,000. Although it may not be much to the city as a whole, it's huge to us. And it would make a huge difference to our department, especially if these funds were considered in situations like this. So lastly, just to present to the board, this is a huge safety issue for us and the youth of our community. So with these points, we just would like you guys to take this into consideration when you guys are considering situations like this. So that's all I wanted to make you guys aware of.
Thank you, Ally. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other public comment? Thank you very much for your presentation. It was wonderful and very helpful. We're going to take a short break, and we'll reconvene at about 10:25. Now moving on to item 21B for possible action, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding future maintenance of the Northgate complex located at 2621 Northgate Lane. Stephanie, are you going to, Danny?
Good morning. So as a follow-up to the conversation that we just had about our asset management, one of the goals that we have is to bring from time to time to the board some opportunity to discuss those manage risks. How do we manage our risk? And what are some opportunities out there for us? And again, realizing these are policy level decisions to be made, we wanted to provide you some background and information in regards to the property located at 2621 Northgate. As you are all aware, that currently is utilized by several nonprofits, including the UNR Cooperative Extension, and we currently are incurring maintenance costs annually about $25,000 a year. However, in looking at our asset management program and how we move forward from here and start looking ahead to sorts of projects that are going to be required to sustain that infrastructure into the future, we have listed major projects that we anticipate will be needed in the next 5 years. And those items themselves total about $274,000. With that being said, in order for us to move forward and maintain this, on an average, we're looking at about $80,000 a year to sustain this particular building.
So you've got a lot of the information there ahead of you, and this is why you get paid to be up there. It's a tough thing. I don't envy you at all in this type of discussion. There's a range of options, and in those three that we've highlighted, we've kind of talked about the status quo, continuing the current use where we're supporting nonprofits, but we're incurring costs, including capital and maintenance. You could sell it. It's been tried before and didn't really work. You got some experience up there that might help us with some thoughts there. There's kind of an outside-the-box thought there. You could deed it to the Regents at no cost, subject to the leases. There's probably some hurdles there too, because will they take it, and how do you work that out? So that's kind of the broad range. We wanted to bring it up for discussion and see what your thoughts are to see how we should proceed. If we do keep it and continue, it's around that $80,000 a year maintenance. We do have Nancy. Did she run out? She's around here somewhere. If you have questions on the Cooperative Extension Fund transfer stuff, but we just kind of wanted to open up, give you the information, and have a discussion. So.
Okay, go to the appendix under lease information. It shows that the leases expire in 2029, 2021, and 2030. I have a hard time believing that's accurate. Does that include all possible options?
I do believe that there's an opportunity to revisit them, and not having them in front of me, I would say that a lot of them had clauses for if there was a reason for termination, but a lot of them were projected very far out there when they were originally implemented, with them, some of them being 40, 50-year leases.
So we need to verify that there's termination clauses in these leases, because you can't sell this property subject to these leases. Who in their right mind would buy a property that has no income but has maintenance costs? Nobody. So that option's not on the table unless all these leases have termination options and we can vacate the building, in which case then, yes, we could sell it. So we need to confirm that. As far as the other options, I guess we'll discuss that here.
Any other board questions?
Even though you're bringing us options, do you have a recommendation? I know it's policy, but at the same time.
I'm pretty torn as staff because I think, as Supervisor Bonkowski's mentioned before, if you do somehow sell it and you terminate these leases, then where do they go? They probably come back to you in some form or fashion in a grant or otherwise. So that's a tough pill. And at the same time, we're looking at the big picture of 92 other facilities having lots of needs. So from that standpoint, just in the day-to-day discussions we have of there's another boiler that broke, let's go to break fix, not doing the status quo is kind of where we think we should head in terms of the big picture. So I would say that's probably our recommendation.
So maybe just in general comment too is I'd have to understand what's in those leases. So if they pay $1 a year, does that, they don't pay any maintenance assessments? They don't participate in any of the cost centers? They don't, I mean, I don't even think that we can give you a valid option without seeing the leases to know where we can make a good decision here. Should all the leases be terminated and renegotiated? And I come from the nonprofit world, and I understand that we don't necessarily want them to have to vacate and have nowhere to go, but at the same time, all the other nonprofits in the community are paying going rents or mortgages. And so is it the responsibility of the city to provide for 3 nonprofits and not the rest? I get all the nuances of this, but I think our job is to protect our own city assets. And since we have insufficient money even to do the city assets we have to look at this. So, but I can't make a good decision without the lease information.
I can tell you that as far as maintenance is concerned, there's no contribution into the maintenance of the buildings. They do pay for their own electrical, power, gas, sewer, and garbage, but as far as maintenance responsibilities, those are entirely with the city.
Brad.
So if these leases have termination options, well, first and foremost, Danny, you're right. Where do they go if we vacate them from this building? Having said that, if we're looking at $25,000 a year in maintenance cost and we have the ability to terminate these leases, then I think everybody at the table has an interest in possibly renegotiating these leases and incorporating a reimbursement of the maintenance cost from the tenants for us to continue to provide that space. Because if we don't provide the space for $1 a year, you're right, they're going to come back because they're providing critical services. And we've had this conversation through the CDBG and CSSG grants, that if a nonprofit is supplying a critical service and they can do it cheaper than the city can, then we should be funding them. Otherwise, we're going to incur greater costs and probably lower service levels if we step in and do it. So there's a benefit to the citizens of the city to provide subsidized space for these nonprofits that are providing critical city services, but at the same time, we also need to recover at least the maintenance portion, and they're already paying the utilities. So I think personally that's the solution that I would like to see. Let's confirm that we have the ability to terminate these leases, and if we do, then before we do that, let's just sit down with all the parties and see if they're agreeable to sitting down and renegotiating the contracts.
And I would have to concur with that thought process, because coming from the nonprofit world as well, pay a lease cost as well as maintenance cost, and but it works towards the benefit of a greater good. So I'm sure there's a compromise there, and so looking at the leases would be helpful.
It begins to look like we're not going to make a decision here, so we usually have a discussion when we reach that point, but I'd like to have a quick question answer among us. The question being, Brad, do you have any idea whether we'd, from this information, it doesn't look like it'd be an easy sell anyway, would it?
Well, again, if we can't vacate the building, you can't sell it, period.
Well, I understand that, and but what I'm saying is, even if we could, it wouldn't probably fetch what it's praised.
No, the value that they have in here is pretty close. It's slightly higher than the value that I would put on it, but I think that the analysis in our packet was accurate and well thought out. So the building could absolutely be sold. And I think it would be a little less than what is recommended in here, but not a lot less. But then again, we go full circle, right now,
I
when these
understand,
nonprofits.
I'm just saying that adds to your, we don't have a lot of options here anyway until we get more information, right?
Yeah, we need to have more information on the leases and.
Adriana, did you have a comment?
I just want to remind everybody, this is just an informational item, and if you have any direction, then you can give them a direction, but no vote is to be taken on this item.
Thank you.
Hi, Darren Schultz, Public Works. One thing, this feedback is so critical to staff, but one thing I haven't heard, and I apologize if I missed it, but if we're looking at an opportunity, and I think it's a good opportunity to, if we can, renegotiate the lease and put the maintenance into those leases. So, and that's an opportunity, but maybe it would be good to hear from you the negative or the downside of the other idea of just turning the facility over to them and letting them take care of the maintenance within themselves. Why there's some angst there, or just how you think about that.
So I think and I apologize because the actual item says it has a motion, but the agenda says it's informational. Right. So I can see where that conflict just happened there. But I think what I'm saying is sit down with the parties and the lease agreement and bring us back any discussion items you could have with them, which would include what you just discussed, is maybe the city deeds it and they take full responsibility. So we dispose of it. I think we're looking for you to meet with the parties and have an open discussion and find out what's best for everybody.
But the question is, who do we deed it to?
Well,
One of them, a new corporation.
a new
there's lots of options.
nonprofit that they set up, it could be any of those, and I don't see a negative to that, and perhaps they might be able to work the maintenance through their avenues that might be more cost-effective for them. I'm not sure, but we don't know until we look at leases.
Well, and I do see a negative. There's value to that asset, and I think if we went out and talked to the taxpayers, they're not going to be real happy with us if we just give the building away.
In essence, though, that is what we're doing, because we're giving it to them for $1 a year for 50 years. So I think that decision might have been made a long time ago, maybe not by this board, but
Not all of them.
we got to look at it all.
But not all of them. We do get something from the Board of Regents.
Comes off our tax rate from the co-op extension that the taxpayer pays.
So what I kind of hear from you is that status quo is not acceptable. We should look at the leases. We should see if they can be terminated, and if they can, maybe that's a discussion to have. And if they can't, we should at least continue to discuss costs, ongoing costs. We might float the idea of the deeding, but acknowledge that there's also an asset there that if we could terminate the lease and get a good chunk of money towards putting towards other assets, that might be an option as well. So there's still some more details we should pull together, look at the leases, get with the parties, and then bring back maybe a recommended motion at that point that we can continue to discuss.
I think you captured it. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 22B. So Lee and Susan, are you going to take us through this?
Adriana, do we need to read the title into the record?
You don't have to read the entire title. If you could just summarize.
Just through the first sentence. So which title would it?
Yeah, I think that would work. Let me see.
So to introduce on first reading an ordinance amending the Carson City Municipal Code Title IV Licenses and Business Regulations, Chapter 13 Liquor Board and Liquor License and Sales, and by amending Section 4.13.010
And all of the other provisions as
at all.
as stated on the agenda in the materials.
Thank you.
Just click it.
Thank you. For the record, Susan Pansky, Community Development. So it's taken us a really long time to get here. The board gave us direction to modify the liquor ordinance at least 2 years ago for some specific items, but as you can see by the title of this ordinance, we have opened every section and tried to make changes wherever possible so that inconsistencies could be corrected and other issues that we had been dealing with could also be corrected, and we could put several other things in that we had been talking about over the years. So we've gone through several different versions of it before it came in front of the board to you today. Just a quick summary of the changes, and before I go into that, I'll note for the record that in an attempt to explain all the changes that we proposed, I put in the staff report a memo that indicated each change as well as the reason for that change to kind of help everyone understand, because these ordinances can be a little bit cumbersome if you're just looking at them by themselves. So with that, the bulk of the changes are related to changing the approval and denial of liquor licenses, delegating that to a hearings officer, which in this case would be Lee Plemmel, the Director of Community Development, instead of having every liquor license come in front of the board. We really feel like those are pretty routine items. Most of the time they come to the board, and that could be handled at the staff level so that the board can be freed up to do other things. However, there are going to be some instances where the liquor license would be referred to the board regardless, and what we've put into the code is if a conflict of interest exists, if the sheriff recommends denial based on the results of the background investigation, if a hearing before the board would be more appropriate, and then after some discussion, some additional discussion, we put another one in that we'll propose in second reading, which is an applicant is requesting a new license after their license had been revoked. We're clarifying some definitions and adding some definitions so there's consistency within the ordinance and also consistency with NRS. Clarifying some penalties that weren't clear in the ordinance. This is probably the biggest one that the board had given us direction on, exempting wholesalers from background checks and appearance requirements. So a wholesaler isn't necessarily going to be located in Carson City, right? So they're going to have a liquor license somewhere else. So is it really appropriate for the board to summon them to appear and require them to go through a background investigation if they've already gone through it in another jurisdiction? So we put that in to the code specifically at the direction of the board, and it is in certain circumstances they do have to have a liquor license where their primary business location is, and they also need to be applying with the same liquor manager that is on their other liquor license, because that would have been the person subject to the background investigation. In discussing with the district attorney's office, we determined that moving the fees into a resolution and taking the specific fees out of the ordinance would be a better way to go. So we've proposed that, and as an information item with this packet, I've provided a draft resolution with the fee schedule. That would come back for it to be adopted with the second reading. So that'll officially be an item on the next round. But in the packet, if there's any questions before we get to that point. Increasing the time frame for which penalties would occur from 6 months to 12 months. So right now, if it's certain number of penalties within a 6-month period versus a certain number of penalties in a 12-month period. So basically, that allows us to keep that liquor license holder on the hook for a longer time frame. So if we're looking at first, second, third offense, then it's a longer time frame than it would have been before. And then finally, because we have our downtown completed and there is, of course, a lot of interest in having outdoor seating areas for those businesses that are down there. Right now, the ordinance prohibits any consumption of liquor in public right-of-way, so we've put provisions in that would allow for that with an encroachment permit. So I'm going to, before I close it and answer questions, there are a couple other amendments after this came out that we're talking about adding for second reading. One is in the current ordinance, the board shall elect a chairman from among its members. It's our understanding that there's no recollection of the mayor, of anyone ever specifically being elected, so we'll just change that to the mayor shall serve. The next one, add to the list of those who are required to appear, an applicant who's requesting a new license after revocation. And then the next one, this is an inconsistency within the current ordinance. Right now, the investigation fee is non-refundable if we've started our investigation. If we haven't started it, elsewhere in the code, it says that it is refundable. So we're changing that section to take non-refundable out. And then amend the section about refunding the license application fee. To be consistent with NRS, we need to refund it if it's denied, and that's the full license, the full application fee. Right now, we have a 50% refund. And in addition to that, if for some reason the applicant is approved by the board and then doesn't go into business, then within 90 days of their approval, they could request a 50% refund. So with that, I will answer any questions that you have, and if anyone wants to add anything. Adriana worked really hard with us on this, and Lee as well, and Supervisor Bonkowski. So everyone's had their hands on this at some point.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. The one comment I do have is under 4.13.140, grounds for disciplinary action. Under number 2, I think it should clearly state to include selling of alcohol not purchased from a licensed Nevada distributor. So that's clearly spelled out. And that's a comment that I had. Other board comments?
So I think that just in general, I'd like to discuss whether we want to add another condition to not issue a license or to give the hearing officer some more latitude to deny a license, is that we consider if a individual has delinquent taxes, fines, fees, et cetera, with the city, so that the hearings officer can condition its payment or payment plans or what we'd like. So I'd like to consider adding that authority for the hearings officer for delinquencies, and I did check with the DA that we can add that. So I'd like us to consider that as another conditioning.
It's 413.125, number 2.
Any other board comments?
And
John?
go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. And then I would just like to, part of the problem for me is we're taking the portion of this liquor license. So if we go to 4.13.210, which deals with the right-of-way and allowing the selling of liquor with a person with an encroachment permit, we don't have the encroachment permit before us yet. So it's a little bit difficult for me to have this discussion, and I'm sorry that the sheriff had to leave because I really wanted to have a much more dynamic discussion about alcohol being sold on our streets, the control of it, the access for juveniles. And my concern is if we're allowing someone with an encroachment permit to do it, there's not a special event. It's all the time that they can sell it, and what controls. And then if we were to just take the 3rd Street Plaza as an example, my concern was an individual had a beer, a glass of wine at one of the restaurants there, it doesn't matter which one, and then had it open and went and sat on one of the benches. So the bench is not permissible, but the encroachment permit area is. And so I was concerned that the public won't know the difference, that while you may have policies that maybe the sheriff doesn't implement that and says, oh, it's okay, they're moving from location to location, we'll kind of let that go. but I was talking to the sheriff just before he left, and he did indicate he would actually like to clean some of that up because we want to be consistent in maybe some of the other areas of town, what he called going bar to bar, and I don't want to speak for him, so I'm not so sure that we have everything we need, that we're just, before we jump or leap, that we take every consideration on what we're going to be doing with alcohol on our public streets. So I just want to bring it up.
So I think we can always come back with something. I think if you don't do this, you're going to be approving encroachment permits for them to do something that's illegal. I think you should move forward with this if you intend to allow restaurants to serve alcohol to their customers when they are outside, to at least make that legal. If there are other cleanups that need to be done about walking around downtown with beers and with a beer in your hand, I think we can bring that back. But I think my recommendation is you move forward with this to at least make it legal for the businesses that you're going to approve to do it to serve.
And Lee, I would agree with that. I think that basically you just need to differentiate between the wine walk, which has a special permit for what they do, as opposed to businesses serving alcohol. You just can't leave the premises with an open container.
You know, furthermore, I would say that this ordinance is not intended to fix any of those other issues that the sheriff may have. So this limits it very specifically to those restaurants and bars that would have permission to do that in a very specific area.
And so then, just as another point of discussion, you're going to allow them for no additional dollars. Their current permit and license is an on-premise license, and they pay a fee. So this would allow them to pay no additional fees and now have somewhat of an off-premise because the encroachment permit gives them rights and makes it kind of their premise. Right?
Well, there will be a fee for the encroachment permit. They do have to pay for that.
But that's not.
So under the encroachment permit, you'll discuss fees under encroachment permit. But the question I asked, the liquor license fee, so whether they were adding 50 square feet to their restaurant floor area inside the building or outside the building, that doesn't change their liquor license fee. So I think if you want to charge the businesses fees to be on public property, you should do that under the encroachment permit. That doesn't affect a liquor license fee. They pay it every year. They pay the same amount whether they have that extra 50 square feet or not.
But everybody else to serve in a public area purchases an off-premise license to go with their on-premise. So if I don't care, Grandma Hattie's, who cares, and I have my on-premise, I pay for that. If I want to be able to serve in the public right-of-ways and do parties or cater, I have to pay another liquor license fee. It's two separate fees. And all I'm saying here is we're now going to grant the businesses to use our public right-of-way to sell liquor for $0 because we're going to issue them I'm just bringing it up, and I just look all the time to make sure we're fair. And so I just want to be fair to all businesses and all, right? But there's no fee associated to sell liquor now in the public right-of-way, which everyone else would pay a special permit fee under I don't want to call it the parties, but special events.
Right, special events with the temporary
They pay a
liquor
fee
license.
of, $20 a day, something like that, to be able to serve alcohol in the public right-of-ways. And I have to get an off-premise, which is a use of public right-of-way. And what we're granting here is for someone with an encroachment permit may sell that liquor in a public right-of-way for free. Because you're going to charge an encroachment, well, I guess you're saying.
They're paying a liquor license.
Right?
They are not doing it for free. They are paying a liquor license fee every year.
They only pay the liquor license for their on-premise.
But that is an annual fee, yeah.
What's the difference between on-premise and a combination on-premise, off-premise? What's the difference in the fees?
We don't have a combination for on-premise, off-premise.
So what's the cost of the?
If they're serving in the right-of-way, if they want to serve in the public right-of-way, they pay their, they pay the temporary liquor license fee as a part of their special event. There is no off-premise license fee. But that would be for a caterer specifically that would be serving that. And that's a separate type of liquor license. So that's for the caterer themselves to have that catering liquor license, or whoever the restaurant is that wants to be able to cater and have liquor as a part of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that particular caterer is going to be paying that special event fee. Anybody, so if I wanted to do a special event on 3rd Street that was in the public right-of-way, I personally would pay the temporary liquor license fee for that period of the days that we would serve them. There is no off-premise fee that I would be doing. And I would have to follow those same provisions where I would have to get the liquor from the wholesaler, but that's what that's intended for.
But to avoid the temporaries, you buy the liquor catering, and then you just notify them where you're going to be, and that's $400 a year. So that's really my question, or my point is, why wouldn't we add potentially another category of liquor license, encroachment permit, and the fee, because just because I get an encroachment permit doesn't mean I'm going to sell alcohol, correct? All people with encroachment permits do not sell alcohol, but they want to do that. Should we not, or they can just buy a liquor catering? I just want to, why don't we just let them pay the $400 fee?
So why can't we handle that under the encroachment permit? So we have an encroachment permit, and then if you're going to be selling alcohol within that encroachment permit, we can deal with that within the encroachment permit ordinance?
Two different fees?
You could. I think the way the encroachment permits work right now, and I don't think Danny's here, but.
It's not how they work right now. They're going to fix it. Don't worry about how they
Okay,
work right
so
now.
maybe it's all open, and I'm not really involved in that part, but we could, yes. And maybe it's an annual fee if they're going to continue to do that. In the past, encroachment permits have been a one-time fee, but we're not, it's kind of a different situation here with the ongoing serving of liquor, so.
Well, and by having, just as a discussion, the liquor catering, if they want to serve outside their doors, then they're subject to all the rules that pertain to this law, which is don't get caught selling to a minor. If they do, that's an infraction. I don't actually want to mix encroachment and liquor. I think that the liquor is liquor, and we are always concerned about selling to kids, the controls, that you have to have a manager on site. And I think selling outside your door is not the same thing, especially in an open public area that's not as controlled. So I just want to discuss this as a board as to whether we want to let them, why can't they just buy the catering and pay the $400 like anybody else? Once, every year, pay $400. And then they can tell every year whether it's making them any money, right? If it's not making them any money, they might not do it the next year. Just thought.
Well, my thought is that it does fit with, it's liquor catering with one portable bar, which is
Right.
exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
And it's a limited time, and it's,
No.
With all due respect, I don't think that's what we're talking about at all. We're not talking about a portable bar. We're talking about a restaurant or a bar that has outdoor seating in a public right-of-way in which the city engineer has granted an encroachment permit under the standards that we're about to bring to you, serving alcohol. I'm having a hard time processing why that would be any different in terms of adherence to ordinance and NRS. The Firkin has an outdoor seating area, private property, right across the plaza in a soon-to-be-considered encroachment permit. You've got two establishments that want to serve liquor potentially outdoors. it's been okay for a long time for the Firkin. So I don't if you want the additional revenue, I get that, but I think this is a solution in search of a problem almost.
I want to make sure we're not talking about takeaway. I think
No, I know. We're just talking about
catering is where you come to the bar and buy it and you walk over to the event and take it away. This is specifically only you're sitting and consuming it at the table and you're not taking it away. So it's also different in that way than the catering.
But they do take it away, Lee. I mean, it sounds great, but are you saying,
This is not
scenario.
I'm going to buy, this is you're sitting down at the, well, and this is for the discussion with the sheriff. This does not allow them to sell to-go cups of beer. This does not allow restaurants to do that. Now, they may do that, the sheriff may not enforce it, or may, I don't know, but this is to sit at the table in their designated space as part of their restaurant liquor license and consume it there. And it's not a takeaway license versus the caterer who comes into an event and sets up the temporary one and people come and buy and then they go off to the event.
So let's say there's a special event happening at the plaza, there's music, which is what we fully intend to occur, and doesn't matter which restaurant, and I'm in my encroachment area, I'm going to set up an outside bar. I'm in my encroachment area. You just said I could sell liquor in my encroachment area. It does not say I can't set up a bar.
They would have to be a part of the special event in order to do that.
The bar is not, they're not going to get permitted to have a bar out. They're not going to get permitted to have a bar out there as part of an encroachment permit. So actually, if they are setting up a bar outside, even within that area, they would then have to be listed on the vendor list for the special event to specifically do that.
Or get their own separate special event permit, which would have that temporary liquor license for that. The one thing I will say.
That's not what this says. I don't think it's what it says, though.
There is a provision in the code right now where if there's a second permanent wet bar, let's say they want to set up a permanent bar out there, there is an annual fee for that now. So, and that would go for inside the building or outside the building. If I have a restaurant and I have two bars, I pay a fee for the liquor license, the main fee, and then I pay a second fee for that next one, right? But that's a permanent situation. If it's a temporary situation and they want to set up a bar outside that they don't already have a permanent provision for, then it falls under special event.
So you're saying then there's no real reason, even with our encroachment scenario that we're going to be talking through later on, to assess a separate fee with regards to that because you already have a provision for it?
Well, we have a provision for a permanent bar. If you would like to add a fee to allow them to serve within their encroachment area, then that would be up to the board if they wanted to add that.
So going back to Lori's comment, the change in language here specifically says for a business that holds a liquor license for on-premise sales and consumption. So it doesn't allow them to walk away with it. First of all, they'd have to steal the glass, but second of all,
That's the individual.
And only within the area
The permitted area.
adjacent to the public, right, adjacent to the business that holds the liquor license. This only applies to them being able to have it within that area.
Right, the person drinking. And that's what I said. So I walk with my glass and go sit. I'm illegal if I'm just.
Well, I've waited till the end on this because my concern is not particularly it's also with the details of it, but my concern is when I used to sit out there, I would watch this process and I would say to myself, gee, they're having the first reading, and on the first reading, they're discussing making changes between the first reading and the second reading, and then they're coming back on the second reading, and it's becoming an ordinance if they pass it. It brings to mind, I just want to ask questions, again, as a newbie, why do we do it this way? Why do we debate the issue, policy and staff, make changes in between, and then it goes into effect? Where does the public get to come into this process unless they're very alert and say, wait a minute, I don't want that change between the two. It really only gives them one bite at the apple. So if we're going to do it this way, and we are really doing it this way today, don't we need a third reading? And I know that's, nobody likes to do 3 times something you figured out after 1 time, but the public isn't here figuring it out. So I just raise that as a question I think is pertinent in a general sense, and I'm probably violating the law by doing it. Okay,
No,
good,
it's fine, and maybe I can clarify that. And actually, it's not a given that it's automatically adopted on the second reading, and the opportunity for the public comment is between the first and the second. And if there is substantial changes or comments, you do not have to adopt it at the second reading. You can have all that conversation, all of those comments on the second reading, and then put it for further review and adoption on the third meeting. And also there are notice requirements as well. It's in the newspaper. It's also, there's newspaper notice of the proposed changes. We also have it, agendized prior to the meeting. So there's plenty of opportunity for public comment, and we do 2 readings so that we have this discussion and don't adopt it on the first reading.
I understand what you're saying, and I think I already knew that to an extent about the possibility but that's still up to us, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm just saying it's very difficult for the public to, even though you get a second notice do they get a crack at the second language? It's a changed thing, and I know we have 2 weeks between, but it really makes it a difficult thing for anybody who's, obviously the person who's really concerned is going to track it as it moves through the process. But most people will find out the language at the time they come here if they're generally interested but haven't specifically read the language. I just bring it up as a question of process, and it's been concern to me for quite a while. And I would say you're right, that possibility is there, but in 3.5 years of watching from out there, I never saw it not get passed on the second reading.
Madam Chair, I don't want the public to think that this is, you said this is the way we do it, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but I don't want you to think that as staff, we're holding stuff back to sneak in there at the last minute. So obviously, this is the discussion that we have, and we make it public. We put it on the agenda, and these changes are as the direct result of the Board of Supervisors looking at us and telling us we need to make these changes and have this discussion at this meeting.
Oh, I understand it, but I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong. I'll echo what you just said. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that the average person out there isn't paying enough attention all the time. When the process works, we think it takes a while. And government is slow, there's no doubt about it. But to the person to whom it's just part of the blur of life, it seems like, oh, it already happened and I didn't know about it. It's partly, and I'll probably step in it again too, it's partly the person who's not paying attention's own fault to that extent. The citizen has an obligation to be involved too, and most of them with a specific interest are involved. But those who don't have a specific interest but have a general concern about these things come down here and say, oh, they're going to pass this ordinance, and they've read the 2 weeks ago language. To an extent, that is their fault, but to the extent that this process is not exactly always totally transparent to them, even though we take every effort to make it transparent, I agree with you. I'm just saying 2 more weeks don't kill the horse. And we have the option of going 2 more weeks, but I'm noting that I've been here 4 years now watching this, and it's never gone beyond the second reading.
So when is the encroachment permit coming to us? At the next meeting?
Right, I intend to bring it next meeting. I've been working that since October. That's been a very difficult process to coordinate with all the different property owners, all the different business owners, the different organizations from the DBA to the chamber. This would this would be one thing, I think, if you added a liquor fee for an encroachment permit where they would be paying attention.
I think so.
Because
Certainly those with an interest, yes.
we've had a lot of controversy over relatively trivial things compared to this one. So I just want to point that out for your consideration.
I'd like to say, too, that after working on this for 2 years, I want to get this in place, and if we need to come back and make some additional tweaks, you can point out, you can go back through this and point out at least half a dozen areas where we're not in compliance with NRS. We need to fix these things, so let's take the big bite out of the apple, and then we'll come back and finish it up at a later date.
And back to the encroachment thing and the outside bars. You're still, the liquor license and the number of seating, the amount of seating that you have, it's all relative in terms of that. So you are essentially charging for that anyway, correct?
Seating in the encroachment area?
Or not?
No, the fee isn't based on square footage or number of seats in the restaurant or the bar. It's just for a certain type of license.
It's just
The
an
business
annual, it's an
license
annual permit
fee is.
fee. It's really the application.
The business license fee includes the seating.
Yes.
There is a charge for seating.
There is a charge for that.
And so will we be including, it's a different
My apologies.
discussion.
I
You're
thought
right.
we were discussing the encroachment permit.
I'm just reiterating the fact that, in a sense, there is a fee with regards to that. So we have to look at that whole picture in terms of what we're looking at going forward.
And the business license fee does charge based on number
Yeah.
of seats. But
After
that's
50,
totally
after
unrelated
75,
to a
something
liquor
like that.
license.
Right.
And because one can exist without the other. So I don't know that you can make that direct correlation.
Are we
Because,
getting off topic?
Well,
yeah,
Well, I think the whole encroachment permit is a topic for that conversation. I think right now, the whole intent of putting that language in that last page was just so that we could decriminalize having open containers in those public places where we've expanded the area. And so, I mean, we could, to make it easy, I mean, we could literally end the sentence where it says, that it shall be unlawful, blah, 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 in any public place in Carson City except where allowed, period, or except where legally allowed, or except where allowed by law, period. And then we could have the encroachment conversation when that comes up.
Lee, do you have some discomfort with that?
The encroachment permit is that a policy, or I don't know, that's going to be law. Anyway, so, yeah, we haven't had this conversation, so sorry for just thinking out loud here. No, no. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't, I think if you said except as permitted by law, would not allow it today. Would not allow them to sit outside at the restaurant, because there is no law that allows them to do that, other than what we're trying to write here.
so I'm willing to compromise here, and I understand what this was to do. And since we've started the greater discussion as a team here, that this will come back for second reading at the same time that the encroachment permit. And so my request, and I'm willing to move this today, but I want the encroachment permit discussion before the liquor license second reading, so that if we have to make any changes and make a third reading, all that discussion can happen and we can all think about it over this 2 weeks. I'm willing to make that. Does that work for everybody?
I would echo that. I think we need a complete picture here so that we know that what we're doing is comprehensive.
We can do that.
I'm going to put everybody on notice. I'll vote no on this if we're not going to have a third reading. I don't know how I can find out if we're not going to have a third reading, but the truth of the matter is that I think we're still writing this sucker, and these are major changes that we're making. The city manager is correct. There will be people who will be tracking this and who will know. But this affects the entire city. It affects the person who needs to know, I'm going to go out into this encroachment area, and then I can't walk down the street. So I can't ask my colleagues to give me a guarantee we'll get a third reading, so maybe I'll just vote no on principle and then come back and vote yes next time if I can figure it out.
You could vote no next time if you don't get the next reading.
Thank you for that, John. Any other board comment on this? Yes? No?
No.
Okay. Public comment? Seeing none, then I will bring it back to the board.
Bill number?
104.
I move to introduce on first reading, Bill number 104, an ordinance amending Title IV Licenses and Business Regulations, Chapter 13, Liquor Board and Liquor Licensing and Sales, as published on the agenda.
With the corrections noted and the fees, delinquent fees and stuff that we discussed earlier. There's these.
Oh, okay, including the items up on the slide?
And the delinquent, that the hearings officer could consider delinquent fees, fines, and taxes owed the city for reasons.
Yes, and including the additional condition regarding late fees and fines. And the additional condition or stipulation that clarifies where you can legally purchase your liquor.
Second.
Did I get it all?
I think so. Second.
I'll not second. I'll vote yes this time and do as Lori suggested next time if I need to.
Okay.
But I think we actually need to have a discussion about this process at some point.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 23, non-action items, legislative matters, and City Manager, I'll have you take this one. I'll just mention that at the Water Subconservancy, I had a legislative meeting, and there are several bills related to water that are going to be watched very closely.
So, Madam Mayor, Monday, the session begins. I'll be offering at that point every board meeting. I'll be doing a legislative update. We also have our legislative coalition that meets every other Friday. And in addition to that, all the county managers get together with our lobbyists on a conference call the Wednesday before every board meeting. So the first and third Wednesday before every board meeting, we get together with our lobbyists. If there are issues that you want me to cover, please let me know on the Tuesday, the first and third Tuesday of every month, and I can ensure we cover those. We are working very closely with NACO. The mayor and I had a very good session with NACO at their recent board meeting last Friday. We will also have a meeting coming up. The mayor, all the other counties that are part of our coalition, their county managers, their commission chairs. We're going to sit down with NACO and discuss many of the bills that all the counties are looking at right now. We talked a little bit earlier about voting machines. That's an item that I understand there has been a BDR that has been filed. I haven't seen an actual bill yet, but there's been a bill draft that has been filed by Maggie Carlton. So we're going to watch that. We're going to work closely with not only our clerk, but I think, not to speak for her, but I think she is also the lead of all the 15 county clerks that find themselves in the same position. So you are going to see something moving forward, I think, on voting machines. We're definitely going to have a piece of that. I think as you look at other potential unfunded mandates, there's also a sheriff body camera bill that is most likely going to move through. Senator Ford sponsored it last session. He's also indicating he's going to sponsor a similar bill this session. Senator Keffer has filed a bill that would partially offset the cost of those body cameras. So we could be looking at a couple of things coming down the road through the legislature that we're going to have to take care of over the next, year or 2 years. But I think voting machines are going to be extremely important. Of all the things we do at government, I think that gets right to the credibility of government. And when we have an election that goes without a hitch, like we've been fortunate to have a professional team here that has done that, no one notices. But when you kick an election into the bleachers, then I think you have a big problem. So I think election machines are going to be a priority. Unfortunately, it's not going to come without a cost. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
There's a metaphor for you, kick the election into the bleachers.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry, Super Bowl week.
All right, future agenda items. I think John just brought one up. And are there any other items that anyone would like to add to future agendas? Okay. Status review of projects. Anyone from the board? Laura?
I'll try and bring the golf report like I've done in the past. I should have that ready, hopefully the next meeting, so I'll bring the golf report.
John?
Got a question about, as the member on the airport authority, this process on the RV park seems to be playing out over the longer haul as it worked out today. I'm curious as to whether I need to ask any pertinent questions of the authority itself. It sounds like they're on top of it with their manager and their chairperson, but is there anything I need or would like me to check with them on regarding that?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And I believe that property is outside their jurisdiction anyway.
I think
it is, that's true, but they obviously have an interest on what goes on there.
Nick, did you have a comment?
No, I'm trying to remember all the material from the special use permit. I believe the developer had agreed to whatever the correct aviation term is for an aviation right-of-way. It's not the correct term. Thank you. Aviation easement. And I think that was part of this. I'm trying to remember all the documents for the SUP. I think that was one of them. I'm pretty sure he did agree to the aviation easement.
But that permit has been withdrawn. Was that requirement also on the water SUP?
I'll check. I don't know.
No, it was one of the conditions.
Yeah,
In the
of approval.
regular-
Yeah, you're probably right. I think it
Right.
might. I'll check to ensure, but I think Supervisor Bonkowski is correct. That was one of the conditions of approval, not necessarily related specifically to the special use permit.
Yeah, I think it's condition 51 or 52.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the only SUP that the city then is currently involved with and they were approved, was for the water, and that was already approved and not appealed here, so we can't add a condition in that one. So does the regular building code, again, we can't add any condition because they can go in and get their building permit.
I'll confirm that.
Thank you. Lori, you had a comment?
And then just in general, I wanted to thank Melanie Burketta. I don't know if she was publicly thanked, but I really want to say that I thought the workshop that we had was well done, and I know that she was a big part of that. And in the future, if we put some more of those together, I would like to include all the elected officials and give them an opportunity to have some feedback with this board, because of, in the 2 years I've been here, I've noticed we've never actually had a meeting with the other elected officials. So if we do that in the future, I think that might be a good idea.
Any other board comments? Seeing none, one last public comment. Then I'm moving on to item 25, motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Okay.